You know, Uzbekistan, I've been working with Uzbekistan for about 25 years now, maybe actually more than that. And they were instrumental in helping us defeat the Taliban after 9/11. Just to note, our own government, along with Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, bear a huge responsibility for the fact that the Taliban existed in the first place. And some of us were opposed to that and fought against that, but it did come back and bite us on 9/11. But without the Uzbeks' support and full, just total cooperation, utilizing their territory in Tarmez and other places along that southern border, their southern border, northern border in Afghanistan, we could never have defeated the Taliban as we did. Yet we all know that the Uzbekistan has never been, at least in my lifetime, a country that could have been on the acceptable list of human rights, levels of protection of human rights. Where do we draw the line here? I mean, how do we know, for example, one of the things that the Uzbeks are declared against, so they help us defeat the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, people who had massacred 3,000 of our own people, radical Muslims. And in fact, some of the things they're criticized for in Uzbekistan for denying religious rights and freedom of speech are basically trying to prevent radical sects of Islam from taking hold. They're not permitting the Wahhabis to come in and with hate-filled agendas, establish little working groups there in the various communities. How do we draw the line there about what's in the long-run interest of a free society and stability in that region and protection of our own rights, our own, let's say, national interests? Both of you had.
Thank you. That's a very important question, Mr. Chairman. Let me answer that by saying first that when we started out 4 years ago, we decided we wanted to use these annual consultations and to really establish a greater level of engagement and thereby establish greater trust between the United States and Uzbekistan and kind of build up from the ruins of what happened in Azerbaijan, where essentially we rapidly cut back on virtually all of our programs in Uzbekistan.
Right.
And, looking forward now, we need Uzbekistan to have good relations with Afghanistan. We need Uzbekistan to be supporting this regional integration vision that I outlined earlier. They have the largest population in the region. They are centrally located. They have played an enormously important role in building the main rail line to Mazar-e-Sharif. Uzbek electricity lights Kabul these days. So there's a lot of important work that's already going on. They have, as you said, quite a lot of anxiety and suspicion about the future. We have sought to reassure them about our enduring commitment to Afghanistan and to the region. And again, I think looking forward, it's very much in our interest to continue to work very closely with the Uzbeks.
Do we sell weapons to Saudi Arabia? Do we?
I can't really tell you, sir. It's not my area of
okay.
Yes, we do, of course.
Okay,
we sell planes,
so we sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. Are the Saudis more protective of human rights than the Uzbeks?
Well, I don't want to try to get into comparisons, Mr. Chairman, but let me just say, with respect to Uzbekistan and weapons, as you know, we have begun a very careful and calibrated approach to supporting now their defensive needs because they have real threats that they face, not just because of their support for the Northern Distribution Network, but because groups like the IMU and the IJU are actively targeting them. So it's in our interest to help defend themselves against those threats.
Well, it also is they see part of that effort as being preventing radical Islamic groups who hate us as well, I might add, who would turn their country into a radical Islamic caliphate or whatever they want to call it. They see that stopping that from happening is important to their interests, but also it's important to our interests. And ironically, we're selling weapons to the Saudis, and quite frankly, I think there are elements within Saudi Arabia that are financing the very groups that are going in trying to make them radical Islamic, anti-Western, an anti-Western country. So it's a rather confusing situation if you do as I do. I believe in human rights and should be part of our agenda, but at the same time, we don't want radical Islam to be taking over countries because they don't believe in any human rights.
Yeah, but again, Mr. Chairman, as you, I'm sure, found out during your visit to Uzbekistan, they're not asking for major weapons systems, at least not offensive weapons systems. Their major ask of us these days is to actually help them defend themselves, and then also to have more business.
Well,
they understand very well they want to get more jobs for their people.
Mr. Ambassador, they made it clear to us that they would prefer replacing all of their former Soviet and Russian military equipment, much of it left over from the Cold War. They'd like to replace it with American equipment. And it's going to be very interesting. We find that, is that in our interest? How do we make that determination? If their human rights are not at an acceptable level, but they're not at an acceptable level because they're repressing radical Islamic forces that would make their country even worse. This is a jigsaw puzzle, and I hope we'll be working on it together.
Let me just add 30 seconds of commentary on that, which is to say that, as you know, we sought and received an exception from Congress to the ban that previously existed on providing any kind of military assistance to Uzbekistan. So we've used that to provide defensive equipment, as you're well aware. But we've also made clear to the Uzbeks that it's important for them to make progress on human rights, and as they make that progress, that will enable us to do more on the weapons side.
Well, I'm hoping that the progress that we're talking about in human rights isn't, well, we're going to convince them now to permit some radical Islamic sect from setting up, well-financed by the Saudis, setting up operations all over their country, which will eventually turn it into a country that hates us and doesn't want to cooperate with us. So it's
the kind of human rights that Mr. Keating was talking about. It's the kind of thing that they need to do because it's in their own interest to do.
Yes.
If an American businessman comes to Uzbekistan and cannot turn on the internet and check how his stock is doing, that's not going to help him very much. And so these are things that are going to be good for them to do. It's not just something that's good. Well,
we certainly agree on that, and we'll sort of work on trying to find out where the rational place to put the line is on these decisions. Now turn to Mr. Sherman, who has been involved with these issues for a long time as well.
A long time.